It began in July 1518, on a sweltering summer day in Strasbourg, a city in what is now modern-day France. A woman named Frau Troffea stepped into the street and began to dance. Not a joyful, celebratory dance, this was frantic, compulsive, and utterly uncontrollable. Her limbs jerked violently, her feet bled, and her face twisted into a mask of exhaustion and terror. She danced for 6 days straight. By the end of the week, 34 others had joined her. Within a month, over 400 people were caught in the same bizarre frenzy, dancing until their bodies gave out. Some collapsed from heart attacks, others died of strokes or sheer physical collapse. This was the dancing plague of 1518, one of history's strangest and most haunting mysteries. For centuries, historians and scientists have debated what caused this nightmare. Was it a case of mass hysteria, a psychological contagion that spread like wildfire through a traumatized population? Or was it something more sinister, a secret poisoning, a biological weapon unleashed by accident or design? Let's peel back the layers of this 500-year-old enigma. First, the facts. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city on the brink. The Holy Roman Empire was fractured by political chaos, crop failures had led to famine, and a wave of diseases like smallpox and syphilis had ravaged the population. Superstition ran rampant. People believed in curses, demons, and divine punishment. Into this tinderbox of fear stepped Frau Troffea. Contemporary accounts describe her as an ordinary woman, unremarkable except for the fact that she danced alone and unprovoked until her body could no longer sustain it. Authorities were baffled. Local physicians blamed hot blood and prescribed bleeding. City council members desperate to restore order did something even stranger. They built wooden stages in the town square, hired musicians, and encouraged the afflicted to dance it out. The logic? If the dancers exhausted themselves, the madness would end. Instead, the music and spectacle drew more people into the frenzy. The plague only subsided when survivors were forcibly marched to a shrine of Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, where they were prayed over and given red shoes. A ritual meant to ward off evil. So what really happened here? Let's start with the most widely accepted theory, mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria. This phenomenon occurs when psychological distress manifests as physical symptoms, often spreading through close-knit communities under extreme stress. Think of the Salem witch trials or modern cases like the 2012 twitching epidemic in Leroy, New York, where teenage girls developed uncontrollable tics linked to social media exposure. In Strasbourg, the triggers were everywhere. Famine, disease, and the constant threat of divine wrath had pushed the population to a breaking point. Dancing itself held dark symbolism in medieval Europe. It was associated with pagan rituals, witchcraft, and even demonic possession. For a deeply religious society, losing control of one's body was tantamount to losing one's soul. Once Frau Troffea began dancing, others may have interpreted it as a sign of spiritual punishment, a curse they too were doomed to fulfill. Fear, guilt, and suggestion collided, creating a feedback loop of panic. The more people danced, the more others believed they had to join or face worse horrors. But there's another angle: ergot poisoning. Ergot is a toxic fungus that grows on rye, a staple grain in medieval Europe. When ingested, it causes hallucinations, convulsions, and a burning sensation in the limbs, a condition known as St. Anthony's fire. In 1692, ergot poisoning was famously, though controversially, linked to the Salem witch trials, where victims claimed to be bitten by invisible specters and convulsed in court. Could Strasbourg's dancers have been poisoned by contaminated bread? The timing fits. The summer of 1518 was unusually wet, creating ideal conditions for ergot to thrive. Symptoms like muscle spasms and delirium align with historical accounts of the dancer's agony. But there's a problem. Ergot poisoning typically causes excruciating pain and gangrene, not compulsive dancing. Victims would have been immobilized, not driven to move. While some historians argue that ergot's hallucinogenic properties could have triggered religious visions, the theory remains speculative. Then there's the cultural context. The dancing plague wasn't an isolated event. Similar outbreaks occurred across medieval Europe, like the St. John's Dance of 1374, where thousands in Germany and the Netherlands danced to the point of collapse. These events often coincided with societal crises, wars, plagues, or economic collapse. Some scholars argue the dances were a form of collective catharsis, a way for communities to externalize their suffering through ritual. Others suggest they were performative, a desperate cry for aid in a world that offered little mercy. But let's zoom out. Whether caused by poison, psychology, or performance, the dancing plague reveals something profound about human vulnerability. In an age without antibiotics, antidepressants, or even basic neuroscience, people were at the mercy of forces they couldn't comprehend. A bad harvest wasn't just a bad harvest, it was God's wrath. A muscle spasm wasn't a medical condition, it was the devil's handiwork. The dancers of 1518 weren't just battling their bodies, they were battling an entire worldview that saw suffering as divine retribution. Modern science has given us tools to explain these phenomena, but the mystery persists. In 2008, a team of historians and epidemiologists re-examined the Strasbourg case, concluding that mass hysteria was the most likely culprit. Yet the ergot theory still has its defenders. Meanwhile, parallels abound in the modern world. Consider the 2021 TikTok tick outbreak, where teens developed sudden, identical tics after watching influencers with Tourette's syndrome, or the Havana syndrome, a cluster of mysterious neurological symptoms among diplomats, blamed, without evidence, on microwave weapons. Humans, it seems, are still wired to turn fear into physical reality. So where does that leave us? The truth about the dancing plague may never be fully known, but its legacy endures as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily fear and superstition can override reason, and how fragile the human mind can be under pressure. Whether through poisoned grain or poisoned thoughts, the people of Strasbourg were victims of their time, trapped in a nightmare they couldn't wake from. As for Frau Troffea, history doesn't record her fate. Did she survive the dancing? Did she find peace at St. Vitus's shrine? Or did she become a ghostly symbol of humanity's oldest struggle, the battle to control our bodies, our minds, and the stories we tell to make sense of suffering? The dance goes on, and the mystery remains, as haunting today as it was 500 years ago. Subscribe for more.